Hello, this is Lorie Cousin with DNAngels, and I have an exciting story for you today. This is the story of Sarah, and it's really about how powerful genetic genealogy is. Sarah came to DNAngels looking for her biological father. She knew her whole life that the man who raised her wasn't her biological father. She, as an adult, started to have questions about who he is. Did she have any half siblings out there? She really wanted answers. She really needed to feel complete. And I was given her case. She started to tell me a little bit about her family history. She said that her mother was raised by a religious family. Her father was a pastor. They were very heavily involved in the church, and she was a bit rebellious. And in her rebellious state, she ended up pregnant. She was absolutely petrified to tell her family that she was pregnant. In fact, she hid the pregnancy for about 6 months, as long as she possibly could, and then she told her family. She was essentially kicked out of the church that she belonged to because she was an unwed mother. And so it was a very difficult time for her. And so even to this day, she does not talk about that period of time in her life. She would not provide any information about who the biological father was. She said that she didn't remember his name. And Sarah came to us looking for answers. I started to build her tree, and one of the branches of DNA matches was very good and came together pretty well. There were a lot of matches, and I was able to network them together. Then I started to work on the other branch, and it was the complete opposite. There were hardly any matches on that side, and of the matches that there were, they were very small and very low, and it seemed like it was going to be very difficult to figure out who her grandparents were. What we do is we map the two branches together and look for where they connect, and where they connect is the grandparents. And once we have the grandparents, then we can determine who the biological parent is, being one of the children of that couple. It didn't look like that was going to happen in this case, or at least not very easily. And so I asked Sarah if she would upload her DNA to some of the other platforms in order to see if there were other matches out there, specifically on the side where there weren't a lot of matches, in hopes of being able to bring those branches together. Sarah happily uploaded her DNA to the other sites, and I was reviewing the matches from those other sites. When I got to the Family Tree DNA site, I noticed there was a match who was familiar. It was actually a match who was networked on the branch that I had a lot of matches to, and this match's siblings had actually all tested on Ancestry, so I had the whole family in the tree already. I just didn't have this particular person's DNA. So I added her DNA to the tree, but then I noticed something very interesting. This match also matched Sarah with X DNA. Let's talk a little bit about X DNA. I don't want to get too geeky, but we do have to go back to science class a little bit. In learning about the human body, if you remember, we have 23 pairs of chromosomes, and the 23rd pair of chromosomes determine our gender. Women have 2 X chromosomes, and men have 1 X and 1 Y. You can see from this image. When a man and a woman get together and have a child, the mother passes down one of her X chromosomes, and the man passes either an X or a Y. If he passes the X chromosome, then the child is a female. If he passes the Y chromosome, then the child is a male. Now, from mapping this match's DNA to Sarah, I noticed that this match's father and an ancestor of Sarah's were brothers. So that was interesting to me because in order for the DNA to come down to Sarah, that brother's match had to be a female. That's how I knew that that was grandma. In this particular case, that brother had 4 children. I already knew that Sarah was descending from one of these, from some other matches, but I knew that this particular man had 4 children. He had 2 girls and 2 boys. Well, I could rule out the 2 boys because he would not have passed his DNA, his X DNA, to those boys. Instead, he would have given his Y DNA to those boys. That just left the 2 girls, his 2 daughters. Well, I had a descendant of one of the daughters had tested and matched Sarah as a cousin. It was not close enough for Sarah to be a direct descendant of that daughter. So that just left the other daughter. I knew right then and there that I was looking at Sarah's grandmother, and that Sarah's grandmother passed the DNA, the X DNA, to one of her sons, who then passed that X DNA to Sarah. I know it sounds a little bit complicated, but that is the beauty and the power of X DNA. I told Sarah, without even bringing those 2 branches together, I told her, I know who your grandmother is, and one of her sons has to be your father. I provided the contact information for the grandmother and for the 2 sons. Sarah took this information and she called one of the brothers. She called and explained who she was and how she got to contacting him. And you know what he said? He said, I think I must be your father. I was actually stationed in that area back during this period of time, and I did date your mother for a couple of dates and then somehow lost touch with her. I think I have to be your father because my brother wasn't even in that area of the country because I was there in the military. And so that's where we are right now. Sarah has made contact with this man. This man has admitted to having a relationship with her mother, and a DNA test is pending. But we just can't be more ecstatic for Sarah, and it's just so exciting. The exciting part was that we were able to do this without even our traditional way of bringing the 2 branches together, finding grandma and grandpa, and knowing that one of those children would be the biological father. In this case, we had nothing but one xDNA match that we could trace back to Sarah. And so that's the story of xDNA. It's a way to find matches. It's a way to use some non-traditional thinking outside the box method. And in this case, it worked. We found sort of that needle in a haystack. And so we are very excited. Without that one DNA match, we may have never solved Sarah's case, or at least not solved it anytime soon, or without waiting for additional matches. If you enjoyed Sarah's story today, smash that like button and give me a pink heart. That would show that you support Sarah's right to know her biological truth. Thank you, and see you next time.